If you have ever had church in your home or had a small group in your home, you've run into the age-old question, what do we do with the kids? That's the question I get asked the most often, and it's the question that we have struggled the most to answer over the years. Going all the way back 20 years of ministry, this is the nagging question in a sense. But there really is a more important question than what do we do with the kids. We have to reframe that question in order to get the solution correct. Here's the actual question. How do we position our children in the body life in the way that is best for them to create, sustain, and have faith for the long haul? Okay? That's really the question. It's not what are we going to do with the kids? No, it's how do we instill faith in the kids? How do we involve them in the life of the church in such a way that they will have faith for the long haul? Because this is not just looking for a program that you're going to create in your home. This is not just looking for something to keep them busy. This is intentional. We go all the way back to Deuteronomy 6. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Teach these things to your children, right? Parents are passing on their faith to the children. That is the primary responsibility of the parent, not the church, but the church is a supplement or a complement to the at-home work of discipleship of your own kids. The church plays a vital role of connecting children into intergenerational relationships and activities that helps them make their faith their own in community. The children have to know that they belong. They have to understand that they're a vital, integral part of the body. It's not like they're just this offset appendage just sitting on a shelf over in a silo waiting on hitting 18 to become a viable, functioning, interconnected member of the body. That's too big of a gap to jump at 18 if you haven't already been forming that and developing that from the cradle up until adulthood. So the church plays this amazingly vital role, but if we're not intentional in how we orchestrate this and are prayerful in this, we're going to really miss a grand opportunity. What kind of things can the body life do to best instill and sustain the faith in our kids? So there are four main options here. And the first option is this. Keep them in the gathering 100%, basically as much as you possibly can. In this way of operating, there is not anything that they can't hear or see or participate in the body life. It's just all going to be put right there for them, okay? On one hand, you have the plus that they're a member of the body, they're a functioning member of the body, they're fully participating in the body life just like anybody else. There's no distinction amongst ages or generations or anything like that. I love that. That intergenerational connection, that relationship with adults in the church is the thing that's going to help them have faith for the long haul. If we just pull them out constantly and they're never around adults, they're never having conversation, they're never hearing the testimony, they're never hearing the prayers prayed, they're never hearing the answers, they're just not going to connect up faith in the same kind of way. So we cannot isolate our children in the home church just like a new youth ministry or like a new children's ministry. So option one is just keep them in all the time. Don't do anything special. Don't have a lesson for them. Don't have anybody assigned to coordinate anything for the kids. They're just there. And one way to do that for us has been a little bit easier because we meet outside, is we allow the children to have flexibility. We meet out in a huge yard out by a lake with a little pier, and the kids roam sometimes. They're just going to get up and roam, and we're all kind of watching. Okay, they fall in the lake, there's supervision. There's people who have eyeballs on them. Nobody's unsafe. Okay, I need to stress that in this video. I'm not telling you to do anything unsafe or unsupervised. We're going to stress that. But we don't want our parents of young children stressing of, oh, my kids are noisy, and oh, they're rambunctious, and oh, they're walking around the yard, and everyone's... No, this is part of body life. The kids need to feel at home, and sometimes the kids need to just walk around. Sometimes they need a break from what's going on. Sometimes they need to go pull flowers in the yard, like the kid at the t-ball game. That you do have a venue for them in certain situations where they're going to be separated from the rest of the body in order for some specific things to take place. And there are a few ways to orchestrate this. So the broad categories are: first big broad category, keep them in. Second big broad category is sometimes take them out. And there are three ways of taking them out that I want to discuss in this video. So the first is a parent rotation. So you're going to just talk to the parents. You're going to say, hey, would somebody take April? Would somebody take May? It's good to do a month at a time. You need to establish what your curriculum is going to be, where it's going to come from. You probably need a co-adult or co-person there to have two people under supervision. In case anything gets said, you have two different adults, typically not married, so that you have two different unbiased perspectives on what was being said. No one's trying to cover for anybody. The issue that we ran into with the parent rotation is in home church, you have a very small crowd. And you're going to end up with basically parents doing this all the time, especially if you have co-teachers or supervision. Pretty much people are going to be doing this constantly, which is not a negative. I actually don't think that's too bad, but it can sometimes get a little bit hard down the road for people to take a certain month when they've just done it, or they're in and out of town and all that with just a much smaller volunteer base. Sometimes the parent rotation is a bit of a stretch for some home churches. So what's another option? Another option would be find a young adult who has a heart for the Lord and a heart for kids, pay them amount of money each week, like $50 a week, to have some time to prepare the lesson. We use the Awana curriculum. We pay for an annual subscription to that, and the lessons are on different age levels. We tend to go with the younger age levels so that it covers the young kids and the older kids still get something out of it. And this gives that young adult some time to study and prepare and get some things together for activities, come prepared and teach the kids. And this gives the kids some consistency. They're developing a consistent relationship. And this is not like youth group where you have 40, 50, 60, 500 kids with an adult or three, but you have this one young adult who is a little bit older than they are, who they look up to because, they are an adult, but they're also relatable. This allows this young adult to connect with the kids on a consistent week in and week out basis. And even with that, we still are going to be keeping the kids in the beginning of our gathering with welcome, with prayers, with communion, with singing. Pretty much still like 70% of the gathering is going to still be everybody in there all at the same time. We want our kids in as much as possible, defaulting back to option one, which is, have them in all the time. It's important to have your kids in there as much as possible. But we also recognize that there are some times when the body has topics to discuss that are not age appropriate. They're going to be topics on marriage or sexuality or things like that you may need to cover, that you don't need little tiny ears to be hearing all of that. Or there may be something going on in the lives of the parents that need to be shared, where the kids don't need to be a part of some of that sharing time in certain very specific instances that we typically know about in advance. And so we'll plan for the kids to not be in for a certain part, for the rest of the body to be able to openly talk about things that are going on in those families without the kids listening in on what's going on. And that allows us to have still that connection and transparent time and not put the kids in an awkward position. So we did that for a season, for probably a year or two, and that worked very, very well. It developed that young adult. They developed teaching skills. They developed a lot of ministry skills, kind of an internship in a sense. And that was a real blessing to them. But there came a time when it was time for them to go, and on super good terms, such a blessing. And we were once again left with, okay, well, what's the next best step for our kids? What will it look like for our children to develop as disciples of Jesus? And so we put this before the church, and we asked them to pray about it. And our kids heard this because they were in the body. They heard that we're looking for a way to coordinate with kids on a regular basis that would be beneficial to the kids and their faith development. And at the same time, I reached out to an expert in all of this and on home churches, and have been doing this for decades, 20, 30 plus years, trained people all over the world. And I asked this person, what are the best practices with this? And I'll tell you what the answer is in just a second. So as we're praying about this as a church, one of our young ladies, who's about 10, comes to her parents and says, hey, I have an idea. I know at Backyard Church, we've been praying about, what's the next step for the teaching and discipling us, the kids. And she said, I have an idea. What if the older kids, the teens, would teach us, would teach the younger kids? Because we look up to them. We want to hear what they have to say. We respect them. And we think that would be really cool if some of the older kids would spend some time teaching us. Well, guess what? That was exactly the answer that the expert gave me. Exactly what she said. And we were very convicted because we've been praying for God to make it clear. And so when a little kid tells you the same thing as an absolute expert on all this tells you, you're going to pay attention to that. And so we tried this, and here's how this went. Called a meeting with the parents, explained the vision. Basically said we were looking at the next step in the discipleship and development of our children, and we've prayed about it. This one person said this This young lady said this. It's the same thing. We'd like to try it. What do you think? For the parents of the older kids who would be involved in doing this teaching. And with the kids that are present, they can hear this. They're hearing the explanation. And they were game. They said, we will try it. So I'd say, okay, Tim is taking April. And so I sit down with Tim, lay out the curriculum, which is from Awana, simplify it. We work through it, pick out the parts we want to do, because we don't have the whole hour. It's not a whole children's ministry. It's just during the lesson time. So we work through this curriculum and come up with the final curriculum. And then the first week I teach, okay? And they're just observing. This young person is observing. And we did like age 12 and up are the teachers. Second week, I'm teaching, they're helping a lot more significantly. And we've picked out parts where I'm doing most of the parts, they're doing a couple parts. Third week, they're doing a little bit more than me. Fourth week, they're teaching, I'm just assisting and supervising, okay? That's month number 1. Month number 2, they take the whole month as the teacher. Adult supervision every time. You always want adult supervision. If something ever were to get said, if someone said this or someone did that, it was all just kids, that would be absolute disaster. So you need adult supervision in this process. So now we go to month 3, have a new young person, sit down with them, work through the lessons, pick out what we're going to do, and I teach, they watch. First week, second week, I teach, they help. Third week, they teach, I help. Fourth week, they teach. Next month, they teach. And now we're on a roll so that when we go through this again, they don't need the assistance part the next time that they get up. They're just going to be able to take the month and teach it. We continue to put adult in the supervisory role. And this has been a phenomenal blessing for our young people, for the young and for the older children. And it has helped them develop, the older ones, to develop some teaching skills, some discipleship skills. They are getting more confident in their faith as they're able to teach and share their faith with people openly. It's been beautiful. And so this is where we've landed. And I want to just make sure that I say that it's still at the same time about 70-80% of any weekly gathering, we're all together. It's just when we get to the lesson time on certain weeks, we say, okay, it's time for the kids to go with so-and-so, and you're going to have a lesson on such and such. And then we send them out 20-minute lesson, 25-minute lesson with some activities. And I'll always tell the leader, when it's the student, I'll say, when you finish the lesson, just come back with the rest of us. Don't feel like you have to fill the time. Don't get stressed out about time. Just do the lesson and just come right back. And that's a cue to the teacher that when you see the kids coming back, to kind of go ahead and start wrapping things up if needed, or maybe there's some things you want the kids to be in on and hear of what's going on in the lesson. And so when you prepare the adult lesson for that situation, you save the things you want the kids to hear for the end, so that when they come back into the main gathering, they're able to listen up and hear or have questions asked about some things that you want them to answer. And sometimes we'll say to the kids when they come back, and what did you all learn about? Share the main thought or share your memory verse before the body, so that they're coming back participating in the body. It's not like they're interrupting us. They're being welcomed right back warmly into the rest of the body. So there's continuity of care. So all of a sudden we have children discipling children. I had no idea that could be a thing, but it's been quite effective. The main thing is just make sure they have guidance, make sure their questions are asked, make sure they feel comfortable with this, give them the support they need. If you need to stretch out the training time longer for certain people, not everyone's the same, so just stretch it out, let them warm up a little bit longer till they get it. Always have adult supervision, and it's been wonderful. This is no longer just a, what are we going to do with the kids? It's, what kinds of things can our children be engaged in that will result in the deepening of their faith and their walk with Christ? It's a whole different game than what are we going to do with the kids. The what are we going to do with the kids question boils down to, well, if we have them in here, they're going to be disrupted, and then our lesson doesn't go the same, and the parents aren't getting anything out of it because they're busy occupied with their kids when they should be listening to the lesson. No one wants to bring their kids. We don't have a nursery because we're not a big traditional church. We don't have a children's ministry to send them off to. We're not a big traditional church. What are we going to do with the kids? It's a valid question, but there's a better question to ask than that. And as we as a home church have tried to answer the better question, we've come up with some solutions that have been absolute game changers for the faith of our children. So really appreciate you watching this. I'm going to put up another video about children and their faith that I hope that you'll watch. It's very important to understand this principle that's shared in this video. So hit like and subscribe if you haven't. Thanks for watching. God bless.